we're going to be a little bit different because we're talking about something unique today, and I'm not going to preach, so you can relax. I'm not going to tell any Bigfoot stories. But I'm going to invite Lindsay Killen. She's our volunteer coordinator up today, and we're going to have a series of conversations with you all today, focusing and highlighting some of the people who serve to make Foundry what it is today. And then we're going to talk about how you can get more involved. And so, Lindsay, we're going to have a conversation today. But I want you to think right now about, what does serving look like to you? What does serving mean for who you are right now, where you are? We think of service, and we think of this being a concept that's a little scary, but we're going to talk about service from a biblical perspective today. So, Lindsay, thanks for coming and sitting with us.
Thanks.
I'm going to turn your microphone on for you.
All right. Oh, should I call you Jimmy Fallon?
I felt like that a little bit this week. Do we want to do like a lip sync contest or something?
You want to battle that?
I don't know. I'm kind of scared too. I saw earlier, I realized that Lindsay was taller than me, so I'm now scared of her. So Lindsay came on board earlier this summer because we realized that for us at Foundry, that service and that volunteering is something that's tremendously just bigger than filling a role or filling a need. In Scripture, when we look at service, the interesting thing is it's really hard to differentiate between service and worship when we read Scripture together. That the two concepts are almost intimately interwoven. So, Lindsay, what drew you to be part of the culture here at Foundry, just as a church person, but also to want to come work for us?
Honestly, the first time that I really heard about Foundry, I was at the swimming pool at Frenchman's Bend, and Jessica Reynolds had on some Foundry swag sunglasses, a pair of white ones, and I was like, what are you wearing? Like, what are those sunglasses? And so she told me about Foundry being held here at the gym, and just a little bit about it, and invited me to come to church. And so I did, and I liked it, and I came back, and I have actually grown to believe everything that Foundry stands for. The way we worship, the way we welcome people, non-judgmental, very welcoming and friendly, and just inviting. And I loved it. I loved the atmosphere. And so that's what initially got me interested in worshiping here and coming to church here. And then the more I thought about it, for me growing up, church wasn't a question. It was a lifestyle. It was something we did every Sunday, hands down, no matter what. And now that I have a son, it was up to my parents to make sure I was up and ready and got to church on time. And now it's my turn to be mom. And it's my turn to create that environment for my son. So that's why I wanted to get more involved and do everything that I can to make sure that our children are growing up on the right path.
Yeah, and bless your heart for wanting to work with me, because I feel like I drive our staff crazy so much. But I remember the first time we were talking, we were just kind of going through things, and we started talking about those 4 assumptions. Mm-hmm. And we talked about those, and you were like, "Okay, that's a really big thing."
Yeah, because Jesus is everywhere, mm-hmm. And he wants us to be involved in everything that, that he has planned for us, and he wants our hands in it, and he wants us to be involved, and he is in the middle of everything that we do. So going back to the four things, it's perfect.
It's just
a
who we are.
Match. Yeah.
No, we earlier when we first started the church, and if you weren't here in the beginning, you're actually going to get a picture of what a little bit of that life was like today. But early on, we were talking about things, and we would meet every other week for launch team meetings on Sunday night, and I would try to share. And all through these last that week, I had been really thinking about, like, what are the implications of John 1:14? That's kind of this verse that we find a lot of our vision from. For the Word became flesh and made his home among us. And we've seen his glory, the glory of his Father's only Son. And I was like, well, man, what does that really look like if you lean into this heavy and realize there's just 4 things we have to assume about Jesus? And I honestly was praying through that. I thought about it that week. And you know what? I thought we got done talking about it at launch team. And I kind of thought that was it. But we realized that it just kept coming back to it and back to it and back to it. And as we've grown as a church, we realize that those 4 assumptions are part of our values for who we are as a church, because these 4 assumptions have formed so much of what Foundry are. And there's 4 of them. The first one is this, up on the screen, that Jesus is here, he's in our world. John 1:14, the Word became flesh and moved into the neighborhood. The second assumption is that Jesus is actively doing things in our world. Jesus is not sedentary. Our God is not just like hanging out doing his own thing. Jesus came to our world for a specific purpose, and he is still here with us today. The third assumption is that Jesus invites us to do those things with him. He is in our world. He's in our place. What Jesus is doing here in Monroe or in Sterling, Louisiana, or in Columbia or in Rayville or in Delhi or in Swartz or in West Monroe or wherever you live, Jesus is doing unique things that need to be done in those neighborhoods. But the fourth assumption, we realize a lot of things just kind of flipped over, and this is the fourth one. It gets its own slide. Not because it wouldn't fit, because it's important. But it's this: our greatest fulfillment and satisfaction will be found in participating with Jesus. That serving together is not just about us making a handful of people not have to do all the work, but when we serve together, that we're falling into this. Our greatest fulfillment will be found in us participating with what Jesus is already doing here in our world. And so over this week, we actually collected some quotes from you, for some people who are serving, and these are the things they said, this is where they have grown in serving. So we're going to roll these through. I'm going to talk through these with y'all. So our first one is from Brooke O'Brien. Brooke serves with her husband in kids setup. That is one of the most unglamorous roles we have here at Foundry. If you ever set up kids before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is what she says: I serve at Foundry because it's quite an accomplishment to see it go from an empty hallway to a place for others' children to worship a Jesus that is big enough. Some little lives are changing in that hallway, and I couldn't be more proud to be part of the setup that gives them the space to accept those changes. Brooke, thanks so much. We got another great one coming down the line from Rachel Waller. Rachel helps out with kids check-ins. She says, I serve because I want to meet people and be part of the bigger picture. It's an echoing thread all throughout these. We realize that our connections happen when we serve alongside of Jesus, what he's doing. Catherine Calhoun. Catherine helps out in kids, and Catherine and her boyfriend Zach also. If you've ever been to Foundry 101, they're the ones that made sure there was pizza in that room. So they're very important. So Catherine said, I get to be part of the church in a different way. It was never like you're too young or you haven't been at Foundry long enough. As soon as I was ready to serve there, there were positions I could fill. And this is all in. We've had a lot of 8-year-olds help with kids tear down before. And this is, Jesus asked us to do this, and there's not an age requirement to this because we all can be part of what Jesus is doing. Bridget Bauer. Bridget says, I serve so someone else can experience Foundry the same way I did. Also to give back what Foundry has given me. Bridget is in our nursery on a lot of Sundays. If you have a little bitty kid, Bridget's the one making sure that they're doing all good. Daniel Rugg, serving has shown me that a relationship with God is not one-sided. You have responsibilities and obligations to God that will allow your relationship as well as others to grow. Daniel is one of these guys. He has been setting up this room since day one. He's been here. It took him either having a kid in the hospital or a kid being born for Daniel to not be here most Sundays, because this matters that much to him. From Rick and Roberta Keltner, they have just started serving in the last couple of months back with hospitality, and they absolutely love it. And so they say, serving at Foundry has been uplifting for us both. We get to develop a closer relationship with others, which brings us closer together and closer in our relationship to Jesus Christ. Those relationships that we form through serving together. We bring the song we just sang, we're one together. That relationship is key. From Rhett Bauer, I serve at Foundry for the opportunity to meet new people and form new and lasting friendships. And through that, I have grown closer to Jesus by opening more of my heart and mind to follow his teachings. See, Rhett sets up the pipe and drape that you see back at the kids' area, or helps with sanctuary set up right here. But putting up pipe and drape and lifting this screen has helped Rhett grow closer to Jesus because he's serving. He's part of what Jesus is doing. So we've got to serve somebody. This is bigger than us. There's a quote that I love so much, and it's by a man named St. Irenaeus. He died 1,800 years ago. But this is what St. Irenaeus says. It's the glory of God is a human fully alive. Jesus wants us to live in a big life in a big world. You know, so much the scriptural idea, this assumption that we have. We actually read this verse last week to finish up our sign series, but it's from the book of John, chapter 20, 30 and 31. And this is what it says. The disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life by the power of his name. The glory of God is a human fully alive. We realize that when we are participating, we are doing the things that Jesus is doing, that our hearts will be fully open, that our lives will be fully open, that we will be fulfilling the purposes that were given to us originally, those purposes that sin has stolen from us. We find that. So much the second piece of this also is found though in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 7. This is a couple verses back from the verse that a lot of us have like on posters or on screensavers that's on our phone or on our computer. But this is what it says. And work for the peace and the prosperity of the city where I sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, for its welfare will determine your welfare. See, God's people had been exiled. They had been pulled out of their country because of broken covenants, and they had been sent off. They'd been literally carted off and hauled to Babylon. If you ever read the stories of Daniel in the Old Testament, this is what Daniel was going through. But God's asking them to be peacemakers in this place. To be peacemakers of shalom is the word that we find in the Old Testament there. But what's interesting thing about that type of peace is it's not the perfect peace that's absent from conflict or absent from anything that's rough or gnarly in this world. It's a word for peace that means everything has been reconciled and made right. Think about this. How many of you have ever had a relationship with someone that was fractured at a point in time? And that because of forgiveness and intentionality and transparency and just general adulting was made right again? And think about how much stronger that relationship is. That's a relationship now that has shalom peace. It's a relationship that fully knows what had happened before and that what had happened before wasn't good, but what is happening now, it is good. We also see that God has a relationship with the place here. We look at Jesus being in our neighborhood and Jesus doing these unique things with us, that Jesus has a relationship with the place where you live. Jesus has a relationship with the places where we inhabit, where we work, where we play, where we get our oil changed, the whole 9 yards. He has a relationship there, and it's a unique call in that place. But the part of this verse that kind of makes me nervous, but also I think should drive our hearts of service towards one another, is where he says, seeks the welfare. That this place will do only as good as you are willing to put into it. A few weeks ago, I explained this as this means us going to somebody or someplace and saying, I want your life to be as awesome as I want my life to be. That if we're seeking the welfare of where we live, we will only reap the benefits at the level that we have sown. So if we despise the places and despise relationships and we try to never put good back into those, we are not going to see the benefit from that life whatsoever at all. And it's right there, 29:7. Pray for the Lord for its welfare, because its welfare will determine your welfare. So God's called us to a place as he is to a place. And like Lindsay said earlier, our mission at Foundry, creating environments for people to experience a God big enough for all their needs. This is not just the mission of me or the mission of the staff or the mission of a handful of people that sit on our board. This is the mission of us as a church. So we feel God has called us to do, is to create those environments, because we realize it's in the places of relationship where we are formed, where we are grown, where we are challenged. And sometimes that's easy and sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it happens in church on a Sunday morning, just like we're looking right now, and sometimes it happens by the pool at Frenchman's Bend. That was the best pair of $1.50 sunglasses I ever bought, Jessica. Thank you so much. That's when we give away a lot of free stuff with our name on it, because you never know what might happen. But as a church, we realize the power of seeing Jesus in our everyday life. That Foundry, we want to honor real life, the lives that each of us live Monday through Saturday and on Sunday. Because those first 6 days of the week can be pretty rough sometimes. And if Jesus is in our neighborhoods and we assume that Jesus is doing those things, we want to be doing the things that he's asking us to do. And what we want to do is to create and to facilitate the spaces that it takes for folks to encounter a Jesus who's big enough. And at Foundry, one of those big ways is on our Sunday morning time. That's a big, important thing to us. We can look around right now and you can see how big of a deal Sunday morning is to us. So what we decided to do this morning was we're going to invite up a couple of people who have served before at Foundry, and we're just going to hear a little bit of their serving story, but why they've decided to serve. So at first, I'm going to ask Amanda Martin to come up. Amanda, along with Katie Phillips, they led our kids ministry for 2 years. If y'all remember, earlier this year, we hired Sarah McBroom as our kids director. Well, Amanda, from a volunteer perspective, did that for 2 years. She's a rock star, in my opinion. So, what's up, Amanda?
Oh, you know, making it.
Amanda said she was very nervous this morning.
This is not my thing. No, I really just wanted to, talk about my new movie coming out. I think I brought a clip, if you could play that. I joke because I'm nervous.
It's all right. So, Amanda, what made you want to do and lead? Because how many times have you been in church on a Sunday morning, like in a big church?
I think this is my third or fourth.
Okay.
I think it's
fourth time to sit in this room.
Yes.
Amanda and her husband Alan, along with 4 other families, started this church in my backyard. And this is her 4th Sunday to be sitting in this room. That's just huge.
Well, I got to worship, just not in here.
I know.
Worship with the kiddos.
Still, yeah. So what made you dig in this deep to Foundry?
Okay. So the short answer to that is my family. We knew in your backyard, right, that we had found a home with Foundry. This is why I don't talk in front of people. And Alan and I both decided that if we're going to do this, if this is going to be our home, we're going to invest. And so at one of our meetings, at our launch team meetings, I put my name on kids ministry because I love kids. I love my kids. I wanted to help build something that my kids would see, that would be a part of it. And if you remember, me and Katie were not supposed to be leading this.
No, y'all came in after somebody had dropped out.
We didn't sign up to be the leaders. We just signed up to teach on Sundays if we needed to. And then, we were asked to lead because the need arose. And for the last several years, my main focus in my relationship with Christ was to be able to hear the call of the Holy Spirit and follow that, because that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my main focus, especially when we were doing this. And that was my area of focus right then, because I felt like that's what I really needed to grow in. And the reason I accepted it when you asked is because I came up with 10 reasons immediately why I shouldn't do it, and none of them made sense. So that's how I knew. This is me being called into something that's uncomfortable and that I don't want to do and that I don't have time to do. Because I really didn't have time.
Yeah, you don't have time. You did not have time to do this.
And so that's kind of the short answer of how I did that.
Yeah. Now you've got a quote that you said you share with the kids a lot.
I do.
I want to hear that quote from you.
Well, I paraphrase it.
You paraphrase it?
Is it up
it's
there?
on the big screen. The Big Bible, as Alan Johnson calls it.
Okay, so C.S. Lewis is amazing. I don't know that there's a book he's written that I haven't read. And this is one of his truth bombs. And so, we are mirrors whose brightness, if we are bright, is wholly derived from the sun that shines upon us. And so, typically, if there's any kids in here, you've probably heard me paraphrase this, because we talk about this a lot in service. And to me, that's what that says is, and it's kind of the reason that I feel we all serve. Everybody that serves, everybody that has a relationship with Christ, I think if you shine the sun on a mirror, it doesn't decide whether it's going to reflect that light. If the sun shines on a mirror, it reflects the sun's light, the full brightness of the sun's light. And I feel like that's what we are. We are mirrors for Christ. And so we talk about, I'm sure all of us in this room have talked to our kids about shining the light of Christ. But if you look at it from a mirror's perspective, the mirror doesn't have a choice. So once we have a relationship with Christ, and once we begin to work on that relationship with Christ, we become those mirrors, and we have no choice but to reflect that light.
Yeah.
The only thing that we have control over is where we direct that light. And mine was directed at kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what do you feel like you would miss out on if you weren't serving? Because you're still teaching Foundry kids
Yes.
a couple times a month.
Yes.
Like, what would you miss out on if you were not serving?
That's a tough question. Chad gave me these questions before, and I still don't have an answer for that, because I feel like that's a really big onion to peel, and it's a fairly linear black and white question to a very abstract, deeper concept. Because I think if we do believe that service, which I do, that service is an immediate, automatic outpouring of Christ's love within us, it's basically the outward manifestation of his love internally for us, that we have no choice, because that's what we've been called to do. Once we are filled, we have no choice but to pour it out. I don't know. Like, I don't know what I would miss without serving. I know I would miss the relationships that I've built. I would have missed not seeing these kids grow. And here, as pastors, as teachers, we're all seed planters. That was a very hard concept for me to grasp. But over the last 2 years, and seeds you don't see grow overnight. And so I think that's the biggest thing I would have missed out on, is just hearing parents every once in a while just say, oh, my child said this, and it was from a lesson that we taught 6 months before. But they recalled it because it just stayed, whatever it was about that stayed with them. I think that's the biggest thing I would have missed out on, is just being able to see what it looks like to sow into people. Yeah. And see that those seeds grow.
Yeah. So through serving at Foundry, how have you gained a bigger vision of Jesus?
That's also a hard one. Because I do believe that we serve out of a relationship with Christ that's already there, but I do think it's kind of like a never-ending cycle. Yeah. It's like a circle. Yeah. And so I know the math teachers, Maggie, I know a circle doesn't have a beginning, but if you had to choose a beginning of the circle, it would be our relationship with Christ, right? So we start with our relationship with Christ, and we focus on that, we grow that, and then out of that comes our service, is an outpouring of that love. But in that outpouring of love, we build community, which is what also we're called to do. Paul talks about it in Ephesians. Yeah. And he talks about it in the context of spiritual maturity and growth of the church. And so in that community, we've all been given gifts. It says in the Bible that we all have gifts, kind of our God sprinkles. And I think if anything, that's what's shown me how big Jesus is because the lens that I view life through and the strengths that I bring are completely different to the strengths that other people bring to the table. So it's really interesting to grow in that community and to see the gifts that God has given to other people that now they are using as an outpouring and showing of their love. Yeah. Others. Yeah.
It's almost like when we're stretched, we find new spaces to grow into, and then because we've grown into new spaces, it's like when you keep on getting a bigger pair of pants. Like I know all about that. Y'all don't know. These two do not know about that. I know all about bigger pants. It's like we're stretched and we grow, and then because we've grown, we need to be stretched even more, and it just circles and circles and circles and circles. And we slowly begin to realize that his vision for the world's bigger than our vision for this world. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you.
If y'all have kids, this is who's been doing that. So our next person who's coming up is Jamie Champagne. Jamie has served and leads our setup team. He's somebody else who's been here almost consistently for 2 years. So Jamie, and I didn't realize this until we started setting this up, Jamie has missed 7 Sundays in 2 years. And so that's the time that Jamie has not literally unlocked and undone that trailer. And so, man, that's wild. Like what made you want to do that? Like, what's your story of getting involved in serving?
Well, it actually starts, I got to say, so when me and the wife first started coming to Foundry, and we first went to Foundry 101, we had, where would you like to serve at? And me thinking at the time that, you know, I played drums long ago. So I'm thinking, well, you know what? I'll serve on the worship team. So I signed up for that, and I remember it was one Sunday I was playing drums, and I happened to look down, and I see Daniel Rugg and John Relfo, and they are sweating and they are working, and I mean, and I'm like, you know, I'm not Neil Peart, and you know, I feel like I can be better served in this area, in this capacity. So that's what I actually ended up moving down to this, and it's just felt like that there was such a need to get this done, to be able to serve and make it an atmosphere for others. And since in the time doing it, we just seemed like we're putting out more and more chairs every Sunday, which is a great thing.
Yeah, yeah. And Jamie typically is the person who pulls out the chairs at the second round of chairs too. Yeah. So like, what made, like, how has your family been impacted through serving at Foundry? Because Missy, your wife, also serves on the welcome and the hospitality area front. How have y'all been impacted by serving at Foundry?
Well, it's actually been a mutual benefit for both of us, because it kind of keeps us to a routine. And you know, when it's not, when either one of us, last Sunday, Lindsay had me off of the schedule, and I really didn't know what to do with myself.
You looked like a dog in a kennel that was too small back there in the corner.
It just makes you committed, and you know, I'm going to tell you, me and my wife's relationship is actually bettered from this. Just a little bit of a story. So before we started coming to Foundry, we came from different ends of the spectrum for churches. She was on one end and I was on the other, and so we had a hard time coming to a grasp of where we wanted to go, and so we didn't go. And when she from social media kept telling me about, man, we need to go check Foundry out, I was like, you know what, that seems like a compromise. And I tell you, we are so glad to be a part of this family.
Yeah, I'm glad we could be your compromise. So how serving Jesus through Foundry give you a bigger vision of who he is?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think of in the book of Mark where, you know, Jesus said that he came down to this earth not to be served, but to serve. And, you know, giving himself as a ransom for us. You know, I think back on myself, and I used to think that I did good by people. You know, I would, you know, donate to St. Jude's and donate here, donate there. But what kind of time was I given, and what kind of energy, you know? And, you know, as you can tell, I don't do much exercise. So
we eat Waffle House 2 mornings a week together, Jamie. So, yeah.
And that's a positive, too, is the Waffle House. We started getting together as a group of guys before setting up. And
yeah, the whole setup team goes to Waffle House at 6:15 on Sunday mornings, too. So they know it's there.
The close and brotherhood that you get. I mean, I want to tell you, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have that kind of relationship with the guys now. And you know, even when I start to getting discouraged, like, man, you know, I need a break or start, I think back, and actually there's this Rhett, you mentioned him earlier. Rhett was a big inspiration because I was kind of getting a little down, and I had a hard time feeling. I mean, we had folks that was working a lot. We had folks that was having babies, and so it was hard to fill this team, and it was getting overwhelming. And asking Rhett, who was also serving in another department, and man, that guy was more than willing to help out, and it brought us closer together as well.
Yeah. So Jamie talked about the first time that they came to Foundry, and before we launched, we by accident stumbled across the best way to organize ourselves, and it's through the gigantic Post-it note sticky pads that you buy at Office Depot, only because we couldn't find a whiteboard, and I knew I was forgetful enough that if I wrote down a list and it wasn't big enough to lose, that I would probably going to lose it. And so that's how we organized ourselves for the first year. And Jamie was there for, I think the last time we used those notes is when you and Missy signed up and signed. Amanda, you remember those notes pretty well. We went through a lot of those. I could tell you exactly how much that pad cost at Office Depot because we went through a bunch of them. But
we had a group of people who said that no matter what it takes, we're going to make this happen. I can think of Cade Reynolds. Y'all know Cade. Cade shared before on Sunday morning. And Cade says, my wife and I knew that this might mean every single Sunday for a couple of years. And thankfully, we're at the place where we don't have to be like that. So if you've heard me talking about Amanda and Jamie and their level of involvement, you're like, well, if Brooks asked me to do something for 2 years straight, I'm getting out of this place now. We're not. But what we've realized is that serving is deeply important to who we are. And that what we're asking you to do is pretty explicit. At the very beginning, I hear a story that Lynn Reardon, who her and David were there at the beginning with us too. She said, I don't think Chad gave us an option that night. I think he said we all had to put our names somewhere. He's going to stay until we do. We're asking you to look at serving once a month. Once a month to get the benefits that you have heard about for the last 25, 30 minutes. To serve once a month, and there's a variety of areas where you can serve. If you have the type of lifestyle where you can be here at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sundays, we've got places for you to serve. If your kids or your schedule or you're one of our friends that comes to church here that lives out in West Monroe, you're like, Chad, I can't be here at 7 o'clock in the morning. You know what? We've got places where you can serve right after church. We've got places where you could serve for 15 or 20 minutes, 30 minutes when the kids are coming in to help them get checked in. We've got places you can serve all throughout the Sunday experience. But we're called to serve people. We're called to be part of people understanding who Jesus is. And we really assume that by us participating with Jesus, we're going to find our greatest fulfillment in life. And so outside in the foyer after worship are the big sheets. And we have the names above the big sheets, and there are printouts of the different ministry areas and what the expectations for those are. I'm not going to ask you to do something blindly. That would not be fair. I don't like getting asked to do when I don't know what I'm getting myself roped into. We've got things to keep it very clear, spelled out there for you. And all we need is your name. We can take care of the rest. But we want to invite you to come and be part of this in a bigger way, in a way where your vision of who Jesus is going to expand. To come take one Sunday a month to be part of other folks meeting Jesus and seeing Jesus. To take one Sunday a month to help create an environment for people to experience a God big enough for all their needs. This is something that you will not regret. You can ask everyone who's currently serving. This has been one of the most fulfilling seasons of their life, and they're excited to have you come on.